So let's look at how we can start to make some sense of our writing. When we did the first chapter review, we asked a number of questions, and that's very pertinent now. So is your writing clear? Does it flow? Does the framework still work for you? And does your writing create bridges and links between the theory, the stories, and the exercises? Does it ask questions to get your reader thinking and exploring? And have you remembered to include the key messages and call to actions? Does it all make sense? So your stories, any analogies, do they make sense? Are they in context of the subject area? Are they consistent? You must remember to close the loop, and what we mean by that is often we might start a story at the front end of the chapter and we forget to actually finish it. So it's about checking to make sure that all the stories and case studies we have actually have a start, a middle, and an end. So check all the steps and make sure that they make sense. Remember when we did the knowledge audit, one of the things that we were looking at was how we got stuff out of our head when we were looking at tacit knowledge. And one of the things that happens when we are subject matter experts is we often, because we know how to do something very well, because we are consciously competent, we miss steps out. So it's a really good idea to try again and put yourself back in that position where you didn't know how to do this. And you might actually, in terms of your steps, ask someone else to check them for you. So do your steps work? Have you missed anything out? Do they make sense? Check your pictures for size and for relevance. All of your pictures need to be at least 300 dpi. And if you're printing your book in black and white, what you might find is if you're creating pictures using Word's smart art, it's probably a good idea to create that in PowerPoint and then copy over the image and turn it into grayscale. Your tables, do they fit? Are they consistent? Do they look the same? Have you thought about the widths and the row sizes and stuff like that? So it's just making sure that if you've created a table format at the very beginning of your book somewhere, that actually they are all the same and they look the same and have the same look and feel. What about your references? Have you remembered to reference? I always put my references for every chapter at the back of the book. I don't like footnotes, but it's a really good idea to double check. And if in doubt, if you're not sure where you've got a quote from, ask. It is very, very important that you do reference other people's work. And in the case of certain organisations, they make it very plain that you are not allowed to use their work. In those circumstances, obviously, you need to take that out of your book and find another way to express what you want to say. And it is always worth asking just to be doubly sure that you are able to reference other people's work. Ask yourself if the what, the why, the how, and the what if is working when you read through your content. Remember, it's important that we cover those off regardless of which framework we're using. And does the text answer the questions you think it should? Because often, we get to that first draft and we think we've done it and we've had all our visual aids up and actually we've gone pretty much off track. So it's a good idea to get your coloured pens out or use the highlighter tool in Word or use some post-it notes and go through and make sure that you've covered off the what, the why, the how and the what if. Something that I find really, really helpful is to go through and check it manually, so print it out and highlight it in with coloured pens and things, and then actually cut it up and rearrange it so it's around the right way and it makes sense, and then go back into my document and rewrite it in the way that it should have been done in the first place. Remember the questions that you were answering? Well, go through and highlight your questions and make sure that the answers have actually been answered. So we're now at that stage where we really want to start to make sense. So we're going to start to annotate. So we want to highlight different areas and decide where we want to move them. And I think it's a good idea to use colour to do that, and then use kind of letters of the alphabet. So decide in your annotation what it is you want to do. So in this case, we're going to rewrite and move, and we've said where we want to insert it. And then that gives us that opportunity to come back and actually do all of those kind of edits. So I'm going to ask the question again, did you format your chapter before you started to write? Now, another one of the reasons that I think it's a good idea to format your work really, really early on is that we can start to use things like the navigation pane, and we can sort out all our headings and body. So if we've used our style sheet and we've created headings and we've created bullet points and all sorts of different things, when you're trying to make sense of your writing, actually you're able to make better sense because you can structure it with heading 1s, 2s, 3s and bullet points and things like that, and it just helps you to read it in a slightly different way. Now, if you formatted it, what you can then do is turn on the navigation pane. I always turn on the ruler as well, so that I can again get a feel for how things are lining up. So if you turn on the navigation pane, what you then see on the left-hand side is all of your headings laid out, and I really, really love this because I get a detailed flow. And I like to see how things are flowing. I can also move very, very quickly between chapters and sections by having my navigation pane on. But you're only going to get that if you have formatted your document. Then it's about reviewing your work in lots of different ways because your eyes will get used to the printed document. So I always have the navigation pane on, and I usually have a 2-page view. And down the bottom of your Word document, you've got a page size slider so that you can start to make the page bigger or smaller. So your eyes will naturally be drawn into certain things if you make your text really, really big. Equally, if you make your text very, very small, then you can start to pick up where perhaps you've put a page break in that doesn't work properly, where you just see things in a completely different way. And when I'm getting almost to the end of my formatting and editing stage, I always make it really, really small, just so I can make sure that all my formatting and things look right. So that's another really, really handy tip. The other thing to do is to use a table of contents to check your flow. So the table of contents is like your navigation pane, and I like to do this so that I can actually, again, just see how things are flowing in my document. It also picks up irregularities in how I might have formatted my chapter titles and my section headings and things like that. So again, it's just another visual aid that will really help you connect to the flow of your writing. Now, you may, when you're in the editing phase, get into a little bit of a mess and you just completely lose track of where you are. And the book feels like it doesn't flow, your head is starting to get confused, and you get into that awful, awful overwhelm. Well, the easiest thing to do is start again. And by that I mean go back and review your mind map or your chapter outline and just check that actually it still makes sense. Remember to chunk it down and perhaps walk it through again. Remember the walk the line exercise. Just place some of your outline in a line on the floor and just walk it through and make sure that it makes sense. And if it doesn't, then you know to come back and chop it up and start moving it around. There's little point staring at a blank screen and wondering what the hell to do. just chop it all up, chunk it all down again, and just redo that chapter outline. Now what I'm going to do now is, before we end this chapter, we're going to go into Microsoft Word and have a look at some of those things that I talked about. In terms of turning on the navigation pane, you do that in View and you click on Navigation pane. And you can easily move between chapters by clicking on each of the chapters, and then you can expand it and move between the various different sections. And the reason that we can do this is because we have selected different headings for each of our sections. So that makes it very, very easy to scroll through our document and make sure things are making sense. Now the other thing I talked about was the table of contents. So in terms of a table of contents, we place our cursor where we want the table of contents to be created. Now Word will only create a table of contents if we have formatted it using the style sheet. And basically we come over here to where it says table of contents and we decide what kind of table of contents we want. Well, I'm not going to change mine, but at any time you've changed anything in your table of contents, you can come and update the table and tell it that you either want to update the page numbers or the entire table. And what I find makes sense for me is to start reading it through and just to see that it is doing what I'm expecting it to. So I'm looking to see if I've got spelling mistakes. I'm looking to see if I've used uppercase in any of the areas, that I've misspelt anything, all of those kind of things. But most importantly, that having this table of contents is like rechecking my outline. So that's a great way of making sure that things flow. So this down the bottom is where we can make our text bigger, and we can make it smaller. And if we want to view multiple pages, we can tell the document that we want to view multiple pages. So really, in terms of editing, formatting your document, I think, is one of the most important things, because it gives you an opportunity to make your editing life much, much, much easier. But also it's about getting to know how Microsoft Word works so that you can take advantage of all of the tools that are there.